that one, right? But think about it. All the things we said would happen. Did, right? Remember? We're not going to be against fracking. We would never do that a couple days before the election. Day one. Executive order. Right? We're going to be tough on Russia, unlike Trump, who had the toughest sanctions in the history of modern America on Russia, but they're going to be tough on Russia. No, we're just kidding. We're going to give them a pipeline that we blocked for 4 years. Ted Cruz is now trying to keep blocking it through the Senate. Because remember, folks, it's okay for Russia to have a pipeline, to make billions, to be energy independent, to leech off of Europe. But you can't have that. You can't have the good paying jobs associated therewith. You can't have the national security component of not being tied to people in, say, the Middle East and the rest of the world that may not have your best interests at heart. But Russia can. And to top things off, not only can Russia have it, but the U.S. can have the privilege of sending billions more dollars to NATO to protect Europe from the Russians that they are enriching. Liberalism is a hell of a drug, folks. Okay? I mean, this crap will make you crazy. But it's not just that. There's the social components, right? My alma mater is leading the charge in some of the wokeism today. Have you seen that female swimmer? Right, at UPenn. At first I was like, maybe it was like a Wharton School of Financing, like they're figuring out how to arbitrage wins in women's swimming. And you want to know the best way it seems to do that? Bring in a male swimmer! But what's even scarier is that there are women who work their asses off. And I apologize for the language. I know this is a much nicer and friendlier crowd than I am, but they spent their lives trying to reach the pinnacle of success in a sport, only to be beaten by, what was it, 38 seconds in the 500 freestyle? 38 seconds, like, you know, 38 seconds in swimming is a long time, folks. And I know, I laugh about it a little bit because I know the woke people at the school probably thought this was a wonderful idea. I'm sure a lot of the females on that team are probably super anti-MACA. They hate everything that we all stand for here collectively. Right? I'm sure they preach that stuff on a daily basis. And now they're getting beat by 38 seconds after spending their whole lives achieving a certain goal. So what I want to know is, guys, where are the feminists? Right? Where are they? They're strangely silent on this one. Because you know it's only going to get worse, right? The same people who fought for Title IX are now dead silent as people who will eventually arbitrage the situation, right? If you're a journeyman male athlete and you want to go to college on a scholarship, guess what? Have I got a plan for you? It's probably not for me, but definitely not for me. If it was for me, that would be big news. But there are people that would do this, and I don't know. Maybe it's worth it. They're all missing, folks. Just like our leadership is missing, and more importantly, just like our common sense is missing. Right? Okay, we can talk about rock bottom, and we can disagree on certain policies. We can watch the disaster that's unfolding. Right? Peaceful protesters equals rioting, arsonic, lunatics. It doesn't matter. If you're on one side, you're totally protected. You're totally immune. Not just from prosecution, but from even criticism, right? You see that today. The left, and not the radical part of the left, but actual mainstream thought leaders are out there literally canonizing, making heroes of actual pedophiles. Right?
Yeah.
I'm with you on this. Apparently CNN is not. True story, where's the lie? Right? 2 in 1 week. One was investigated for 17 months. What did they know and when did they know it? Because it seems that they would have known about it. But those same thought leaders called Joseph Rosenbaum and some of the other people in the Kyle Rittenhouse, they were heroes. Imagine that. Imagine being in the United States of America in 2021, but at any other point in time in history, it's saying a dude that went to prison for raping 5 young boys, as young as 9, somehow is out of prison, probably because of the lunatic policies of the radical left, right? They let them out. Then has a gun, you know, that's not a talking point, right? When the criminal gets the gun illegally, shouldn't have it, totally fine. Because as long as he's rioting for the leftist cause, as long as that can be weaponized against a person like Donald Trump or any other conservative, it's fine. You can come burn down our cities. We won't talk about it. About, you know, burning down the federal courthouse all over the West Coast, taking them over, trapping police inside. That is not an insurrection, folks. But if your grandmother was somewhere within 200 miles of Washington, D.C. on January 6th, they're being investigated by the FBI. Okay? You talk about an agency who's lost its wedding. And what's funny is this. We do have to make the distinction. I was at events last week. 6 FBI people came up to me. I'm like, oh God, what do I do now? Russia, 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 Russia? Is this something else? Like, I don't know. And it was exactly the opposite. They came up to me and apologized.
Oh, wow.
Right? Because we have to make the distinction between leadership and the door kickers. The guys that carry the guns, by the way, one of them, a lady, carrying a gun, they get it. They're more ashamed than we all are of what's happened to the leadership. But it's the lawyer, bureaucrats at the top, the guys that have never touched a gun, that have managed to infiltrate all aspects of our government, of our institutions. They're the ones that are controlled by the left. And that's because we have allowed it to happen. Right? That's why watching a group like this here means so much to me. It's why I got my butt on a plane and flew all the way to the West Coast to speak for half an hour, only to fly back. Because we are the front line of freedom. We are the front line of liberty. And if we band together, we can take on these institutions, but we got to do it together. Okay? That's where we've gone wrong for a long time. And I've, you know, if you've been and seen me speak here, you've heard me say it 1,000 times, but guess what, folks? If we get together, they cannot cancel us all. Okay? They won't. And this will be contrary to a lot of our beliefs, because I'd love not to have to participate in cancel culture. I'd love that it didn't exist. But as long as it does, folks, we better be playing the same game. Okay? We've been playing t-ball for half a century, while they're playing hardball and cheating. Right? We've turned the other cheek, and I understand sort of the biblical reference. I understand the mentality. But it's gotten us nothing. Okay? It's gotten us nothing. While we've ceded ground in every major institution in our country. Right? We've given up academia. Okay, when I've spoken with Charlie for a long time. When I met him, he was a young man. But we sat there and we gave it up. We gave up academia. We gave up pop culture. And by the way, a lot of the people in pop culture, they don't believe the BS they're selling. I promise you this. We all know this, right? But there is no consequence to selling it. Right? You see it. Even now, what's been great, and there'll be a couple of them here today, even country music, where you know exactly what they're thinking. I was friends with a lot of those. Man, if I say something, my record label's going to cancel me. And now, there's guys that are speaking up. Jason Aldean, others, John Rich is now speaking up. They're saying enough is enough, because decency is out the window. Right? So they got pop culture, they got sports and academia. Right? The grooming grounds for our children. But again, they've taken over the upper echelons of law enforcement. Right? FBI, CIA, you don't have to look too much further than the last couple of years. You don't have to look too much further than the last couple of months of who in America gets prosecuted and who's nothing to see here. It's a disgrace. But even worse, they've taken over the upper echelons of our military. Right? I mean, we talked about rock bottom a little bit, but did you ever think you'd be in a situation as Americans where we would watch our military pull out of a 20-year war prior to getting and taking care of our civilians? As we can disagree about policy and a lot of other things, but that was the one that I woke up and was like, oh my God, what happened to our country? I mean, think about it. We have generals, right? General Milley, he testified before Congress. I could not have seen this coming. Really? Like, you've been there for 20, you could not have seen this coming? You know who could have seen it coming? Everybody! If you could not have seen this coming, you not only should not be in the military, you should not be in military leadership, you should probably not be in charge of a McDonald's. Everybody saw it coming. My 8-year-old saw it coming. He was asking me like, "Dad, I don't understand." I'm like, "I don't either. They're idiots." But again, there's no consequence to losing wars. There is a consequence to not being woke enough because they really wanted to learn about white rage. Remember that one? This is a term that none of us had ever even heard of. They're making up stuff as they go along to justify the nonsense. Right, sir? I mean, they're going to preach critical race theory. I'm not sure how that makes us better war fighters. They're going to throw people out of the Marines who are probably, let's call it, in peak performance. Totally not susceptible, right, to the coronavirus. Right? If you're 90, it's maybe different. If you have a pre-existing condition, it's different. If you're an active duty Marine, you're insane if you have to jam it down their throats or throw them out of the U.S. military for it. And yet here we are. They're doing this. You see fighter pilots resigning. You know, our most elite warriors say, "Yeah, we're just not doing it." And you start to wonder, is that on purpose? Right? Our most elite warriors, right? You've seen Rob O'Neill talk about this, the guy who killed Bin Laden. You're like, yeah, you know, we weren't so bad when you sent, you know, whatever it was, 27 conservatives to go kill Bin Laden. Like, you know, that. But it's almost as though they're doing it on purpose because they don't care about winning wars, right? Lloyd Austin, our Secretary of Defense, 2-3 weeks ago said, after China tested a hypersonic nuclear-capable missile, right? He said, maybe we should probably focus some of our energy back on China. Right? Like, are you kidding? It's all you should have been doing. But no consequence. Right? You keep getting your promotions as long as you're really woke. If you're not, if you're a conservative, if you express those opinions, even subtly, you'll just never get promoted. I saw yesterday the Air Force put out a new logo for their diversity, inclusion, and whatever the hell the other part of the acronym is. Equity, that's right. Because it... we got a plan here, now. Because again, it's not about giving everyone an equal shot to succeed. It's about guaranteeing an equal outcome. They are bringing memes to life. And as a general in the meme wars, I appreciate this, but like... a general in the meme wars. 3 weeks ago or so, a month ago, I put out a meme which was the Republicans, it's a B-52, all black dropping bombs. This is Republican policy. Below it, it was a B-52 dropping bombs decked out in the pride flag and like BLM signs and all this other stuff. Dropping bombs, that's the Democrats, because it's the same thing. You just got to do it with a woke veneer. And I'm looking at the two logos, I'm like, oh my God, they turned a meme into life, because there is a plane, a bomber, made up of the colors of the pride flag, and this is going to be, just look at my Instagram. It's real. Like, so you think they're joking at this point, but they're not. Right? What do you think our enemies are doing? They're laughing. You think that China is thinking about, we got to make sure we have plenty of trans pilots, just... Hey, by the way, I'm 100% fine with it if all of them were, if they were the best pilots. But that is not their focus, right? It's not about finding the best ones, right? Just like when they talk about the breakdowns of the labor force between men and women. Why don't they ever talk about that there's a grossly underrepresented portion of society? There's a grossly underperforming component of female bricklayers, and I think that's a disgrace. Right? Jordan Peterson was talking about this the other day. How come that's not a problem? Maybe no one wants to do that job. Maybe there's not some sort of nonsense woke component to each and everything that we do in our lives. And yet they would have you believe that it is. So that's why we have to band together, folks. The pendulum has swung so far, it has overcorrected so much. The mainstream left has lost their minds. What? That's probably true, but no, I'll say this. It has changed, right? When you say it, there was a time where the Democrats actually represented hardworking men and women. That is true. It's a long time ago, I agree. Not during my lifetime. They've been able to carry forward the brand from 70 years ago to fairly recently, as though that was still true, but it's not, right? You saw what was the Democrat congresswoman who was hosting wine and cheese parties, I think she was from Illinois, to teach other Democrats how to speak to their constituents. She was doing this. They had focus groups on how to talk to the people. Like, if you're going to go be in Congress and represent your neighbors, you probably should need someone to teach you how to talk to them. You know, I don't know how to talk to the peasants. We gotta. Well, that's the mentality, right? They're better than you. You don't know it. We must govern you harder because you're incapable of making a decision for yourself. I mean, if that's not the mentality, I don't know what is, right? So they're out there doing that, and they don't know how to speak to their neighbors because they've been focused elsewhere. So there are still moderate Democrats. They are just not represented in government, and that's the problem. The moderate Democrats are voting for people who will pretend to be moderate, but you cannot become an elected official today and actually be moderate, right? There's no California money, there's no Soros money, there's no, the billions that are flowing in from God knows where. No interest. And you've seen what it's done, right? Now you see some of the leaders of some of these most woke cities. What was it? I guess it was the mayor of San Francisco the other day. Okay, we gotta stop this crap. You mean it wasn't a brilliant idea to say that if it's under $1,000, you can just steal it. Who cares? If it's under $1,000, that's a pretty good living, folks. Do that once a day, 365 days a year. It's pretty solid. Especially if there's no consequence. What did they think was going to happen? Out of curiosity, I'm just trying to, you wake up and you think you're dreaming because no one could be that stupid, and yet they are. Each and every time. It's hard to believe. It's funny, I was talking to some friends the other day whose kids were, of college age. They said, they're going to NYU, and I go, I know your kid. How did they get into NYU? Just they're pretty conservative? He goes, no. They just wrote an essay with the mentality of, what could be the dumbest thing I talk about? And I promise you. This was some serious art. I'm impressed. They wrote an essay about, if you were thinking, how to, one-up the insanity, they did that as their college essay and got into NYU. Totally didn't believe a word of it. But, hey, don't hate the player, hate the game. So this is what's going on, and people are getting it. When I see young kids like yourselves coming out, I promise you guys, we're not alone. And look at, what do you think is the biggest cultural phenomenon, probably of the last 50 years? New one. How about, let's go, Brandon? Tradition of the last half century, right? I can't name another one. That it's carried on for a year. It's at every university, all over liberal universities, it's going on. Because people finally get it. They know, they see it. That's their outlet. When in history have the Democrats lost, at least partially, and probably a lot more than anyone will be willing to acknowledge for the same consequences we talked about before, right? When have they lost youth? That's how insane it is. That's how bad it's gone, right? The hypocrisy, the lies, right? You've all heard me do the Hunter and Don Jr. comparison before, imagine it was me! I have a feeling they have a problem with all of the things that they said. How dare you! I don't know. If I was doing crack, you probably wouldn't give me the pass. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. That's right. I mean, that is not exactly what we call a high bar. Not doing crack. In all fair, I appreciate it. I think it was a compliment. I'm not 100% sure because I'm saying, I don't know. It's like the basics. Right? And he took it a little bit further than that, obviously. Beyond the financial corruption and all of that, there's, I think every one of our countries that is an enemy of ours has one of his laptops. Every one of them has a video of him naked doing crack with prostitutes. I mean, minor details. I'm sure they'd let it slide if I slipped into oblivion. So, what we have to do, guys, is band together. And what makes me very happy is actually seeing Republicans doing that. Because Donald Trump opened the door for them. Right? It's all I could ask for. I just wanted them to learn to fight back. Right? And they have. And they're starting. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer than I'd like. Okay? Sometimes it takes a couple more calls from me, and they're like, okay, I wish you would have gotten there 2 weeks ago, but like, we're making progress. Oh boy. Well, I appreciate it, because that's the greatest compliment someone could pay you, but the biggest thing what we need is people who are willing to take that heat, to take the slings and arrows each and every day. And until we have that bench, Trump is our guy, in my opinion, right? Like, until... this morning, on my way over here, okay? Kevin McCarthy actually talking about Axios. When they take back over power, they are going to do to the Democrats what the Democrats have done to us for the last 5 years. We should have started doing this back in 16, okay? But guys, it's better late than never. I know Kevin, and I know he's doing these things, and I get it. No. Hey, sometimes, like I said, working in those systems isn't as easy as you think it is, right? It was hard for my father, because you want to come in and you want to say, hey, I'm going to be the bulldozer, but you got 500 people and their 10,000 donors all working against you. But when you understand it now, when you see it, that's important, guys, because I want to have that progress. If we're playing that same game, right, both hardball, we win, okay? Think about it. We win because there's no way that our elections, even as they are, should be as close as they are. Let me explain. Right? Say you're still within, rounding error, margin of error, 50. What do they have on their side? They have big tech, $1 trillion institution. Right? They have mainstream media. Another, probably $1 trillion institution. And they got social media, which we all use. Another $1 trillion institution. That's their marketing department. We're up against $3 trillion institutions, and it's still close. You know why? Because their ideas suck. Their ideas are garbage. But, with multiple $1 trillion institutions defending you and working as your marketing department, it's easy to get some of those things through. But the problem is they've gone too far. People watched America burn. And we're told it was peaceful protest. We're told to not believe our lying eyes. Don't believe what you see. We're going to tell you. I remember at one of the rallies, I think it was Wisconsin, or the riots, they're going nuts. There's a reporter, it's mostly peaceful protesters. There's a building burning in the background, and he gets hit in the head with a brick on air. I'm like, I don't know, I don't see it. Right? You see the nonsense as it relates to Kyle Rittenhouse? You see? We got a little justice for Juicy. Right? Schadenfreude, sort of, you know, when you take a little bit of joy in someone else's misery. I don't like to do that often. I don't do it at all. I'll make an exception for Juicy. Because he spends so much time and also because I took a little bit of a risk on that one, right? Remember, consequences if you're awesome. No consequence for being like, it totally happened, it's really believable. We hate every conservative who could question it, right? I was the first sort of blue checkmark Twitter to be like, hey guys, I don't know about you, but this does not add up. I did that on the second day, the day after it, I think it was. I did this thing, I was thrown off social media, they wrote all sorts of articles about me, I'm preaching hate. I'm like, I'm not preaching hate. It just, no one's this stupid. But I was wrong. Jesse was that stupid. But he was only that stupid because he was so used to everyone taking his side. As long as you went against us, it didn't matter. You could get away with whatever you want, right? I don't see anyone thrown off of social media or fact check for the tweet saying it definitely happened and how terrible Trump supporters are. I go, what do you think the odds are of a Trump supporter surviving the streets of downtown Chicago at 2 a.m. in MAGA gear? I don't know, guys. Not too good. I set the over-under at about 15 seconds of life. But it didn't matter. So that's why, guys, there is some common sense prevailing. There are people tuning in that haven't been paying attention. Those same people who just said, hey, I just want to work hard to feed my family, put plate on the table, put my kids through school, try to get them a good education where they're not being indoctrinated with the garbage we see here every day. Just want to do that. They're listening to a little bit of news in the background, and they assume it's at least somewhat real. They're waking up. They see it now. Bill Ackman, this is a good example during the Rittenhouse trial. Bill Ackman, billionaire New York hedge fund guy. He watched, he's like a Bolshevik. I mean, he's left of all the crazies. Funded most of them for years. Billionaire hedge fund guy from New York City. He started tweeting during the Rittenhouse trial. He said, I'm watching this with my wife, and it's so different than everything I've been told. I'm trying to figure out how Kyle Rittenhouse is a white supremacist after shooting 3 white guys. He did it seriously. It was like a well-articulated tweet thread. He then goes on to say, I had no idea that the people that they were making into heroes were actual pedophiles. I mean, I don't know, you'd think you wouldn't, doesn't mean they maybe deserve to get shot. But if someone's gonna get shot, it might as well be a pedophile. I would never condone. I'm not going to disclaim that one. It is what it is. Run with it, you jerks. It's a true story. But he's sitting there and he's doing this tweet thread. He goes, listen, I've been reported about in the financial news for decades, and I read it and I'm laughing about how ill-informed it is and how many lies there are and how much nonsense it is. Because I'm in the deal. I know exactly what's going on, and what they're writing is nonsense. But then I turn the page, and I read another article on something that I am not a subject matter expert on, and I assume that it is accurate. And I've been assuming that for 30 years. But what I should probably have been assuming is that it is just as bad as the drivel that I've been reading in the financial side, where I do know what's going on. So he puts out this tweet thread, and the New York Times calls him, sir, did someone hack your phone? Did someone hack your Twitter account? Because if you're on that side, you cannot break from the talking points. You cannot break from the norm. You cannot challenge the narrative. No matter how insane, no matter how ridiculous, you must obey. And that's what brought you Trump, folks, which is why we need guys who will not simply go along, who will challenge it. So when I see an article about the Republicans saying they're going to do that, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt, and I'm going to make sure that I'm out there every day holding them to task. Because if they don't, we're going to be loud about it, right? We don't need more Mitt Romneys. Involved, stay in the game, help those who are actual fighters. And I just want to thank all of you for being here, guys. You're just an awesome crowd. Keep doing what you're doing. As I said, you guys are the front